Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, I am SocioPsycho, and this is Mob Reviews, and today we're going to take a look at Guild of Dungeoneering. This was created by Game Brinos, and it is a dungeon crawler / card game. How well exactly this manages to pull that off is what we will look into today, and we'll begin in the options menu. Now, the options menu are very simplistic. They don't have a wider variety of screen resolutions, which is unfortunate. I have been playing it at 1920 by 1080 and it has been running at 30 frames per second. The art style is a paper mesh 2D top-down look feel to it. It's not horrible and it has its own art style, and there's not a lot of combative elements to it that would require a higher FPS. It doesn't degrade any of the gameplay. I have not had any clipping, tearing, or crashing in performance-wise, so no issues in that regard. The music has been entertaining. There are some fun and curious songs in the game, and you have a very easy and negotiable volume selection. Now, when we actually go into the game, you can see a very basic layout, and you have different heroes. The game concept is very simplistic. You play as a guild master, controlling different heroes, and you can send these heroes into dungeons in a mission-based style system, but only one hero at a time. So as you can see, there are different rooms here that you acquire by expanding your guild. You have might, magic, and loot, might being more melee and archery type attacks, magic obviously being magical attacks, and your loot. These upgrades that you see in the different tiers, such as in the loot item, these increase the item drop chance of you coming across these during your play, making the loot rewards a little more feasible as you progress forward. Now, the unfortunate element of this fact when we talk about the loot is the fact that the loot, while you can buy increased tiers, you don't equip any of these items that you buy, these rooms that you have, onto your heroes, which is a little confusing. As you can see here where my mouse is in the top right corner, this is sort of a workshop for new and improved weapons that you can find in the field. But you don't take any of those weapons with you. When I click on these little companion hero characters, they have a little saying, and that's about it. There's no open inventory screen during the guild slot where you can equip items and sort of level up your characters or anything like that. Now, we'll get a little bit more into that in a second when we talk about the hero creation of it, but it's really unfortunate how limiting the actual guild control aspect is when it correlates to your dungeoneers and what you're meant to do in this world. That also goes into the different icons upon how you acquire heroes. Now, there are different buildings, like you can see here, this is a tavern. It will add another room to your guild, but it won't give you anything bonusly outside of a hero. And all you can do with a hero is change the name of the hero. So while the individual heroes, whether it be a warrior, a bruiser, or a ranger, or something of that regard, the individual buildings that they are tied to, whether it be an archery range or a tavern or some such, don't actually do anything for the units overall. It would have been nice if they had some correlation. If you were a mage and you had an archery hall, maybe that archery hall gives everybody a little damage resistant or some passive buff for all your heroes, because now it's part of your guild. So if you're a mage and you have an archery hall and your mage is in combat, maybe it's a little bit more resistant to the first archery attack during that fight. But there's no correlation. There's nothing that ties anything together. And so while you do go exploring, and you can only explore the caves the first time, they may have Quest 1 and Quest 2 upon them, but once you complete those quests, you can't go back in. So even though you complete these quests and you gain more money and everything else, eventually your guild doesn't feel like it's really prospering, because how the guild works in the expansion element doesn't tie to the units. Now there are, before you start getting out, well, what about that one thing? There are tier 2 and tier 3 upgrades for Warrior's Might. It's an idol, which is a passive. which gives a +1 to all physical damage in battle. So when you attack with a melee attack or a weapon or some such like that, not magic, you will get a bonus. The tiers 1s have talismans, which you can take into battle, which give a different bonus for the first 2 fights, but not anything else. So in a certain way, your heroes as individuals can benefit through certain purchases. But if I have a mage, he's not going to benefit from this, or some type of character. There's no real cross-correlation. It is only the most basic simplification of certain idols or buildings giving tiny bonuses to your heroes, which was very disappointing. The fact that the items that you need to buy cost so much means that the game feels more like a grinding experience, but at the same time, the world that you have to explore is very linear. So as you can see here, it may not look like I've completed much in the game, but it definitely has taken me a bit longer than I would have liked to get as far as I have. And there is definitely a luck element needed, as when you throw a card game element into it, there's always going to be luck, but there's not the standard give and take elements which balance that. Now, when we go into the game really briefly, you can see that there's a randomizational element here upon where you get some cards in the very beginning, and your hero is there as well. When we open up the hero character slot, there is no experience bar. The heroes remain level 1 every time they complete a mission. So if you are fighting in a dungeon and your hero acquires a level 5 status and completes the mission, when they return to base, they revert back to a level 1 and all their gear is gone. So instead of having a more in-depth level design where your characters could amass and there'd be dangers present to challenge that throughout the world, it falls into every time you go into battle, you are thrown into it with the same mechanics, same randomization of luck and chance upon where the enemy will be and what cards you will get to try to deal with that. And to offset that is if your character does die, the guild loses nothing. When your hero dies in the dungeon, a screen will pop up as we see here, and it will say your hero has fallen, and immediately right after, a second hero of the exact same class will join your guild. No cost of money, no morale failures across any of the boards, no issues whatsoever. So you continuously have this endless supply of heroes joining your guild that you can't interlock or really coordinate with each other. There's no sense of progression as you level up because the hero system is empty. Now this may not be the main object of the game, and you might be wondering, well, what about the card element of the game? And when any randomizational game, you do have a heavy chance when it comes to luck. But this game really expands the gap in between skill, preparation, and luck. And unfortunately, luck plays a much larger role in this game, and repetition due to the heroes not leveling continuously than there really should be. Because you can't prepare the different classes in a card-esque manner of what they're going to take into battle with them that either goes on the gear sets that they've chosen in previous battles, it means that when you fight through a new mission, the gear that you find, which is random, needs to be up to the task to fight either a magical creature, to fight maybe an ooze, which is vulnerable to magic, or a dark knight, which you'll need a lot of physical defense against. There is no real hard preparation for these fights. You are thrown into it with a heavy chance of luck, and the only inkling of card selection you have is based on the basic cards that you get by the different Dungeoneers that you take into battle. A wizard or a mime will be different than a warrior or a berserker. But while the cards may play slightly different, it's not such a gap or a uniqueness as you may expect or hoping as your standard card trading game. The individual classes may feel a slight difference in between, but the majority of the spells that you come across do the same exact thing. You can have a warrior use nothing but magic. It's impractical to say the least because you'll gain no bonuses from doing that, but there it is. The spells are not really class specific or even a intelligence stat worthy. Oh, my berserker has this amount of strength here, or my wizard has this much intelligence. The cards are not that different. One card can say if you attack with a magic, it heals you for 1. Another will say, well, if you attack with physical, it heals you for 1. And that's to bridge the gap in between the fact that you have melee or magic only, and real no tactical fluctuation in the actual combat itself. It basically comes down to block, damage, and heal. If you can block incoming attacks, then you're good. But you have to know what you're going up against, because there is magic block and melee block. So if you stat for melee and the creature is magical, you're going to be at a disadvantage. If your character is able to heal, then you can outlast. Or maybe you're trying to go for spike damage. But the spells and cards that you get aren't a selection that you draw from. The cards that you get aren't rewards from the dungeons. The cards that you get are cards that fall onto the gear that are more or less the same repetitive items and gear and cards that you continuously see no matter what character you play on. So the slight differences in the different characters don't really bridge the gap for the repetitiveness due to the lack of any sense of progression on the hero's individual sides. So at the end of the day, the concept of what this game is, a Dungeoneering card game, and the way that they depicted it in the presentation, I was really excited for more than what it had. Unfortunately, the severe tedium of repetitiveness on top of the more than grindy nature of the game, where you go through one dungeon X amount of times because of a randomizational element, your heroes keep dying, so all you lose is time played, not any resources or any gear, because your next hero of the same class that just died in a dungeon, another one comes in and is ready in your guild. You don't lose any gear because you don't get to keep any gear. You don't lose any experience or any personal connection with any of the heroes because you're not allowed to build those in any fashion of any sense. You have no ties emotionally in any regard to any of your heroes, and every time you start a new mission that is on a linear path, you have to start with a new character that is level 1 with a card layout you cannot really prepare or make feel like it is truly your own. There is no deck building. Well, technically, yes, there is a very limited deck building tied to the gear, but as a true card trading type game, no. You don't go into battle thinking I'm going to use control spells versus direct damage, maybe I'll use a summon here and there or something. There is no depth. And it is a simplistic art style, which I am more than fine with. But what annoys me is just how they have this really great idea to combine the world, but it makes very little sense. You're a dungeoneer, a guild master, leading heroes to do goody-goody stuff to gain treasure, to increase your guild and fame in the story, in the lore. But when you go into a dungeon, cards pop up and say, where would you like to place this room? Where would you like to place this monster? So you're creating this dungeon as you progress forward, which is, from a standpoint, kind of cool, but you're not a dungeon master. Where you put the minions in the element of ensuring that you can control what enemies to a point you're able to fight to sort of level up your character as you go is nice. But that's only a brief cover to try to hide or mitigate the shortcomings of the actual combat system in the game. You can place down gold. Well, gold should be something that you find. That's the whole reason you're there. It should be like, wow, I want to go into this dungeon. Maybe the dungeon randomizes or it can stay the same. It doesn't matter really that much. Randomization for replayability, but if it stays the same layout every time you go through, then whatever, because it's about the journey and the experience. And instead they're telling you, build the layer, make your own journey, and perhaps some people like that, but from a story standpoint, from a dungeoneering standpoint, it really doesn't make any sense whatsoever. and it doesn't help the actual combat or fluidity of the game, because it's not about feeling like you're in danger or wondering what's around the next corner. It just comes down to the fact that if you are able to get the lucky card and get that room where you want, get that one monster where you want, and that monster drops that item that's helpful to you, then you'll be successful. The game unfortunately relies way too much on luck rather than any skill or understanding of what cards you should have or need to have. At best, this could be an entry-level casual game for card-style elements, but if you're looking for something a little bit more fleshed out, something more in-depth, then you're sorely going to be disappointed, as I was. Is it a horrible game by its own standard? No. It has charm and it has some humor, but this is lost on me based off the repetition that is needed, the grindiness which you have to endure just to make a little headway, and the never feeling like you're actually progressing. I cannot recommend this game. So ladies and gentlemen, I have been SocioPsycho, and this has been Mob Reviews, and I thank you for watching.